Daro mat, Darao mat. Welcome, Vanakkam, Namaskaram, Jai Hind. I've chosen to begin this very important video with the words that are now associated with Sri Rahul Gandhi. Let me make it very clear that I don't do this because I belong to a party. By now you should have realized, I'm sure all of you realize, that I cannot belong to a party. For that very reason, I am also free to accept what is good and beautiful from any camp, any party whatsoever. I find tremendous significance and contextual relevance, indeed universal relevance, to these words that Rahul Gandhi has made so very important, so very resonant, and so very absorbing as well as encouraging, fortifying. Daro mat, darao mat. Now, I'm going to give it a slightly different spin. I'm going to adapt these words before I adopt them. I would say not do not fear. I would rather put it positively and say, let us dare. Let us dare. Because to my line of thought, it is not enough that we abjure fear or we refuse to be afraid or scared. It is necessary that we dare. We become brave and bold. Because fear is a negative state. Fear makes us retreat. Fear paralyzes us into inaction. Fear prevents us from expressing the best in us. Fear also makes us vulnerable to manipulation by forces external to us. So, being in a state of fear is utterly inimical to our individual best interests. It's also against the interest of the nation, because after all, the sum total of the interest of the nation is the aggregate of the interests of the individuals. You can't have a nation of cowards and build on that very weak and brittle foundation a great nation. That's the reason why I try to shift this sentiment from the negative to the positive. So, daro mat, daravo mat, I would simply say, let us dare. If that is registered, we can take the next step forward and ask the question, what is it that we must dare? Dare to do what? Dare to be what? Because that's very important. So, I would suggest just two things very briefly in the interest of clarity and brevity. First of all, let us dare to believe. Let us dare to believe. Now, you would say, what's so great about it? Well, let me straight away tell you what is great about it. When I say let us dare to believe, I mean it in an entirely different sense, entirely different context, and two entirely different ends or consequences. Let me make my meaning clear. Traditionally, we have been turned into believers, but believers in this religion or that religion, consequently believers in this God or that set of gods, this creed or that creed, this dogma, this ritual, this scripture, that scripture. I do not intend that kind of belief at all. In fact, the belief I am going to recommend may run counter to that belief, because it's precisely because of these beliefs, including belief in certain ideas of God, that we have become compulsive liars. After all, on the basis of very strong public evidence available to us. It's the political party that pretends to have monopoly over a particular religion that seems to have no qualms in telling lies in public and in showcasing very low and negative sentiments in the public domain. Now, it's also true that the more religiously fervent or fanatical a person is, the more apt he is likely to use falsehood in order to advantage his sect, his church, or his religion. So, in my considered opinion, religion and falsehood are inseparable. Therefore, belief in religions, belief in gods as they are made known to us, which may be completely different from the true idea of God, and I am personally convinced that it is, make us inclined towards falsehood. So it's not that kind of belief that I advocate. When I say, let us dare to believe, quite obviously, it is dare to believe in something different from what we have conventionally believed in. That's why bravery is required. To believe in what people normally believe, you don't need courage. We only need the spirit of tame conformity. When I say let's dare to believe, obviously, I have something else in mind. And what exactly is that? Let's believe in the power of truth. Let's believe in the richness of love. Let's believe in the fortifying role of justice. Let's believe in the essential, irreducible reality of human freedom. In other words, let's believe in the four foundational values stated in the preamble to the Indian Constitution. Let's believe in that. Why do I say this? Because in the many responses I get to the videos that I post, the contents of which are positive and which advocate positivity of spirit, there is an understandable cynicism about it, about the feasibility of it, because that's based on contemporary experience, so I can't blame anyone. But it's precisely because such a situation exists that we, swimming against the existing currents, are duty bound, are obliged to believe in what is by and large considered to be not relevant or feasible or practical. Now, let's believe in the power of truth. After all, that's our national motto, Satyameva Jayate. In another, truth alone triumphs, not falsehood. So, we have, as citizens, as patriots, we are duty bound to believe in the power of truth. To believe in the power of truth means two things in particular. One, to stand always by truth, to uphold truth in everything that we do. Secondly, to stand for truth in the public domain. It's not only that we should do what is true and righteous, it's also that we should stand for truth concerning others. For example, if a party or a person tries to thrive on the strength of falsehood, it's our moral and spiritual duty, it's our godly duty to ensure that that diabolic stratagem does not work. Doesn't matter which party. After all parties today endorse the politics of post-truth exercise, post-truth politics, the post-truth breed of politics, which means that all parties have more or less agreed that truth should have no place in politics. So it is in such a grim situation that we must dare to believe. And when I say let's dare to believe in love, I also mean to say that let us dare to believe that a God, any God, in whose name we are made to hate each other, is not true God but false God. I don't want to go to the extent of saying that the God per se is false. I certainly want to say that the usage made of that God is false. Definitely false, because it is the nature of God to love. God is love. God is truth. God is justice. God is righteousness. God is the guarantor, giver, and guarantor of human freedom. So, if in the name of the God that we are required to believe in and adore, we are required to hate, we are required to resort to falsehood, or required to believe in falsehood and lies, required to practice injustice, cruelty, and violence, and renounce the culture of compassion, and go against the freedom of others, then surely either that's an abuse of God or that is a false God. Either the idea of God is false, or that God itself is false. You can't have a God who induces ungodly behavior in people. It is simple common sense, the kind of common sense that kindergarten children should be capable of managing. So let's be very clear on this. Let's dare to be clear. Let's dare to believe in the God of love, in the God of truth, in the God of justice, in the God of compassion, and in the God of human unity, freedom, and oneness. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And as a group of people, we must stand for it, even if the entire society, even the rest of the country believes otherwise. I don't think that's the case. There is no grounds to be so comprehensively cynical. There is no basis to assume that we are living in this kind of darkness of the soul, or what Martin Buber calls the dark night of the soul. Martin Buber, the German philosopher, Martin Heidegger. Martin Buber is the Jewish philosopher who wrote that very interesting book, I-Thou. I-Thou. Martin Buber. So it's very important for us to realize that lending our support to, or endorsing, or going along with, or silently walking along the ungodly idea of God and political practices based on that ungodly idea of God, which makes a mockery of God, mockery of the nature of God, mockery of the very idea of God, is something that we, if we care for God at all, if you care for our own humanity, our own inner integrity, we are duty bound to reject vigorously, reject out of hand, out of court. Let's dare to do that. That's where courage is required. So as I said, it's not enough to not fear. It is imperative, it is necessary to be bold, to be courageous. Let's be bold enough to believe, but let's be bold enough to believe in the God of love, God of truth, God of justice, God of compassion, and God of universal brotherhood. We are all equally children of God. Any use of the idea of God in order to divide the people, to play one section against another, is a diabolical abuse of the idea of God. It's as simple as that. Whether it happens in my religion, Christianity, it has happened umpteen times. Umpteen times. I cannot justify it because it has happened within my community. In fact, if it happens within my community, I should be the first person to call it out, and I should be the first person to oppose it as vigorously as I can. And I do that. But when I do that, the priestly class in my community makes a majority of Christians believe that I am an enemy of the Christian faith. I don't care. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ has taught me to love everyone, including enemies, to be always committed to truth, to be always just and fair in treating others, do to others what you would that they should do to you, to be kind and compassionate as in the parable of the Good Samaritan, I'm sure that irrespective of which religion you practice, if you go by the scriptures that you have, the associations you have with the idea of God are precisely these. Yet, all religions, in the way they practice and push and promote their vested interests, they reject, violate, desecrate these fundamental attributes of God, and apparently they do it for the sake of God. This is the madness which functions at the heart of all religions. And therefore, if you care for true religion, if you really care for God, you have a sacred duty to absolutely refuse to have anything to do with this diabolic misuse and abuse of the idea of God, the name of God, the identity of God, as a support or legitimization for divisive politics, communal politics, corrupt politics, subhuman politics, or what is now in a more dignified phrase called post-truth politics. If India is the land of righteousness, we cannot tolerate post-truth politics even for 1 second. If a national motto is Satyameva Jayate Nanaratham, we cannot put up with post-truth politics for even 1 microsecond. And yet, we revel in post-truth politics. This is something that I cannot understand. Please help me to understand. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is, let us dare to be human. Let us dare to be human. To me, the highest vocation in the world is to be human. It's a great privilege to be human. After all, in Hindu thought, as per the doctrine of karma, if you lead an unrighteous life, in the next birth you may well be an animal or even an inanimate object. Now, that theory, that dogma, or not dogma, that doctrine, is clearly situated on the idea that it's a privilege to be human as compared to the non-human, including the animal. So that's why I'm saying the goal of all spiritual traditions, as against religious traditions, the goal of all spiritual traditions is to enable us to be human. We have not become human yet. The purest form of humanity is divine. When humanity reaches its highest level of purification, purity, it merges into the divine. That insight is there in Hinduism, that insight is also in Christianity, it's also in other spiritual traditions. Jesus Christ, according to the Christian thought, is the meeting point between the human and the divine, is the purest form of the human, which is hardly different from the divine. That's why he is at once the Son of Man and the Son of God. I'm using this as illustrations, not to try to influence people of other faiths. I'm not a merchant of religion. As a matter of fact, I feel that people have to be liberated from religion if they have to become truly and fully human. Religion is the largest hindrance to individuals, male and female, becoming truly human. At least my knowledge of the Gospels of Jesus Christ convinces me that Jesus came to liberate people from religion and to take them closer to God so that they can be enriched and fortified in their humanity. So, the second area of courage that I advocate is the courage to be human. As of now, we are divided into so many camps. We have Hindus, we have Muslims, we have Christians, we have Sikhs, we have Parsis, we have Jains, etc., etc. But we don't have human beings. Let's be human. In a context where people are just parceled off in the name of religion, divided into watertight compartments, members of each compartment looking at members of other compartments with eyes of suspicion, anxiety, etc., which perversity is now on the increase. Let's swim against this tide of the meanest aspect of human nature. Let's dare to be human. And the greatest contribution we can make to our country, its greatness, is all of us becoming richly, fully human. So, I'm going to make a request to all members of this YouTube Sangamam. That's why I use the word temple, Sangamam, very, very thoughtfully. This is a new temple. This is the temple of our shared humanity, not shared religion. Such a thing will never exist. The religion is the grandest, most destructive tool of division and destruction. I am inviting you to join this new temple of humanity, our shared humanity. Humanity unites. The common denominator for all of us is our humanity. If that is not there, there is nothing that we share. India has to be, the future of India, if India is to have a great future at all, it has to be imagined on the foundation of the shared humanity. Shared humanity. We are one. We are one. We are one. That is the truth about us. Everything else is a blatant lie. The idea that we have to be always fragmented and divided along the religious lines, and to the extent we are thus divided and fragmented, we need to look at each other through eyes of suspicion, and we need to fear each other and herd together so as to be protected from the predators that all others are. We are not predators. Everybody else is a predator. Everyone who is different to me is a predator. I have to be very careful. This is the greatest lie that can be pronounced. Unfortunately, there are many people whose conscience is hardened enough to make them want to thrive on this falsehood. We can only feel sorry for them. They have sold their soul to the agents of darkness. And those who follow them will fall into the abyss. And if this trend continues, this country will be ruined altogether. So true patriotism demands that we stay committed to the national motto, Satyameva Jayate. But please understand that as far as spiritual values are concerned, the four spiritual values are truth, love, justice, compassion. Four. Very easy to remember. Truth, which is our national motto. Love, which is the Christian definition of God. God is love. Justice, which is the first value stated in the preamble to the Indian Constitution. Compassion, which is the greatest emphasis in the teachings of Lord Buddha. So these four attributes constitute the substratum of humanity. You cannot be human if you're not committed to these four values. And to the extent that all of us as Indians try to uphold and live by these four values, we will become one. That's the only time when we can in truth and in spirit say that we are one as Indians and that we have a common mother, Mother India, and work together for the ennoblement of Mother India, to honor her with all that we are ever capable of. Anything short of this will always suppress and suffocate our true potential. When I think of my country, my heart gets filled with sadness because so far our history has been a history of wasted opportunities. And opportunities were wasted simply because we renounced these four values. We did not really try to uphold these values in practice, particularly truth. I would like you to look up a very famous letter written by Count Leo Tolstoy. The title of the letter is Letter to a Hindu. Hindoo is the spelling used. Maybe in recent publications, the spelling would have been reformed. Gandhi was so influenced by this letter that he edited it, published it with a preface of his own. It's a letter that influenced him so deeply when you know that he named his settlement, one of the two settlements in South Africa, Tolstoy Farms. and what Gandhi owes to Tolstoy, especially in relation to opening his eyes to the power of truth, has not been adequately realized. And Tolstoy's main argument in that letter is that India's perennial weakness has been its incapacity for truth. And he raises this question: how come that such a great nation with tremendous population strength succumbed to a ragtag group of merchants under British East India Company and lived in slavery for 200 years? He says there is only one explanation for it. India did not care enough for truth. And he says, so long as you remain indifferent to the strength of truth, you'll always be vulnerable. You will never fulfill your national destiny. I really believe in it. So my sense of patriotism makes me advocate courage. Courage to be true, courage to be loving, courage to be just, courage to be compassionate, irrespective of who needs it. It's not enough that I'm truthful to my children, my wife, or my fellow, my co-religionists. I should be truthful to everyone, every Indian. I should be loving towards every Indian. I should make sure that every Indian gets justice. I should be compassionate in the way I look at and deal with every Indian. That's what it means to be bold enough to be human in the Indian context. So, Daro mat, Darao mat, not enough, not enough. Rahul Gandhi, please remember, please listen to me. Not enough, not enough. Daro mat, Darao mat, not enough, not enough. Dare to believe, dare to believe. Namaste. Jai Hind.